Oh, well, let's kick off talking about that very thing. Kweku Afari keeps a very close eye on all matters transfers, joins us now. Hi, Kweku.
How you doing, guys?
Not bad.
Yeah, good,
I mean, the
thanks.
money being quoted, unofficially for Federico Chiesa 2 weeks ago was 25 million. That's what they were looking for. So here we are suddenly, about sort of 10, 12 million quid to take a punt on a player who is still coming back from a big injury, and there's no guarantees he's going to be the same player. But at that sort of money, it's worth a crack from Liverpool's point of view.
Most definitely. It's a far cry from the player that we saw at Euro 2020, actually 2021, where he lit up the tournament and helped Italy win it. He suffered an ACL injury since then, and he's had niggling injuries subsequent to that. But he's a player with undoubted quality. He just needs to find himself again. Juventus are in a compromising financial situation right now. We've seen them offload a few high earners in Chiesa, if this deal goes through, Alexandro, Wojciech Szczesny. They were banned from European competition last year because of breaches of FFP. So they needed to get him off the books because he was one of their highest earners. And he's not in Thiago Motta's long-term plan. He's a progressive manager that plays a specific 4-2-3-1 formation, and Chiesa doesn't fit into that. He didn't feature in any of the preseason games, hasn't featured in their first 2 league games this season. And so it makes sense for him to find a move. Liverpool is an unlikely destination. They've got abundance of riches when it comes to those forward players, especially players who play out wide. You think about Salah, you think about Jota, you think about Cody Gakpo. They've got so many players that can play out wide, Darwin Núñez as well. And so he's a player that will have to fight for minutes, but he's got quality. He's got undoubted quality. It's just about playing regular football and finding a home. And I think under Arne Slot at Liverpool, you may be able to find that.
Yeah, he struggled a bit in the European Championships, didn't he, as well, for Italy? Showed some signs, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, there's been some stories about how Alex Crook doesn't think there's anything in this Arsenal move for Darwin Núñez, and people have been looking at Chiesa coming in and putting 2 and 2 together. But that this late in the window for a player that they've persevered with, and I think there's more to come from. I'd be very surprised.
I'd be surprised on that one.
Yeah, it would be very, very surprising to see Darwin Núñez move this late in the window. Like you mentioned, they've persevered with him over the last couple of seasons. He's a player that Jurgen Klopp liked and Liverpool fans warmed to, but he's not decisive enough in front of goal. And I think this is a make or break season for Darwin Núñez at Liverpool. But I can't see at this stage in the window him making the move. And he's not necessarily what Arsenal needs. Like you mentioned, Alex Crook reported there's nothing in that story, and I agree. I think Darwin Núñez at Arsenal is not a perfect fit. I think Arsenal, if they were to spend big money on a striker, it'd be somebody who is clinical in front of goal, because they have got goal contributors along that front line. It's just that decisive number 9 they're missing, and Darwin Núñez is not that.
The other thing about leaving it late is, like, say Mark Gay, say he does go to Newcastle for 70 million, so they get their money, Palace. But it leaves them so little time to get a replacement. I suppose they've got somebody lined up.
I mean, I suppose we'll know, won't we, in the next 24 hours if they're picking up another centre half, then we know it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You never really understand why teams leave it this late to make moves and to bring players in. But Palace have reached an agreement with Wolfsburg to sign centre-back Maxence Lacroix. And so he's somebody that they're bringing in as a potential Gehi replacement. Obviously, Joachim Andersen has also left the football club. So they are making moves, Palace. They've left it late, but they do need reinforcements in that centre-back position, because last year, we all remember the momentum gathering behind Crystal Palace. The likes of Elise was lining up the league. Eze was playing his best football. Adam Wharton, Mark Gehi, and it kind of has dissipated as the season has started. But yeah, they haven't reached an agreement with Wolfsburg for a centre-back, Maxence Lacroix. So expect that deal to get done within the next couple of days, and he could potentially be a Mark Gehi replacement.
Now, we got 3 big players, all England internationals at the moment, not knowing where they're going to be after Friday evening. Jadon Sancho, Raheem Sterling and Ivan Toney. It's going to be interesting how it all shakes down. 2 of them could end up at Chelsea. Neither of them could end up at Chelsea. Do we know what's going on, Kweku?
Yeah, it's a merry-go-round right now. All these moves are interdependent. So we understand that Victor Osimhen's having talks, we're having discussions with Chelsea as we speak about potential move to Stamford Bridge. Jadon Sancho is somebody who's clearly surplus to requirements, despite that truce between him and Eric Ten Hag at the beginning of the pre-season. And so these moves all depend on each other. There was talks of there being a potential swap deal for Jadon Sancho and Raheem Sterling. For Sterling, it's a very interesting situation because he played for the top clubs in this country. You think about Liverpool, City, Chelsea, but it's not worked out. And he was brought in the first wave of this Bowley spending brought in that first transfer window alongside the likes of Cucurella, Koulibaly, Aubameyang. So a lot of those players aren't there anymore. And as a result of that, he's on significantly higher wages than the rest of the Chelsea players in this squad. So Chelsea are looking to offload him. Enzo Maresca's made it pretty clear that Sterling's not in his long-term plans. It's whether the finances of this deal make sense in terms of if they are going to do, Chelsea are going to do a deal with Manchester United, whether Jadon Sancho is an adequate replacement for Raheem Sterling. Does Jadon Sancho fit into what Maresca wants to do at Chelsea? All these moves are interdependent, and I expect there to be a lot of movement between now and the end of the window.
I don't see where he plays. I don't see how he gets minutes. I mean, we've got so many wide players, unless they're thinking of, loaning out Mudryk to,
Well, I saw some of the
somewhere.
comments by Maresca about Mudryk the other day. I mean, blimey, I think I'd be renting in near Cobham if I was him. He said, I was not happy with Mudryk. On the ball, I expect a bit more quality. I think that's
I think
true
we all
view.
do. He's hopeless.
Anyway, the other interesting one is Everton, and Sean Dyche has been very upfront about the fact that they could lose one of their big stars before the window closes. It's going to be quiet on Branthwaite. He has got an injury at the moment. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin, they're saying Newcastle, Manchester United, others could be potentially making a late move.
Yeah, so on the Branthwaite one, that has gone very quiet. Everton did bring in Jake O'Brien from Lyon at the beginning of the window to possibly mitigate Branthwaite leaving. Those talks have gone quiet. We saw those nonsensical links to Liverpool last week. I can't see that one happening. But he's a very cultured centre-back, and I'd be surprised if a top club wasn't sniffing around him between now and when the window closes, because he is very good. I do believe that Everton have got their replacement lined up in Jake O'Brien. In terms of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, it's frustrating for Everton fans when it comes to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's a player that's heading into the final year of his contract. We know that he's been plagued with injuries. It's surprising to see there be such a list of suitors for his services. Like you mentioned, Manchester United were linked with him earlier in the window. Can't see that one happening. Newcastle also linked with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. They can't afford to lose him on a free. Everton, we know about their difficult financial situations over the last couple of seasons. And he's a player that garnered a decent transfer fee. And like I mentioned, he's got a year left on his contract. And so if he is to move on from the football club within the next year, then they'll try and get that deal done within the next couple of days, because he's a player, because of the English tax and because of his proven track record in terms of scoring goals in the Premier League, he can garner a decent transfer fee. It's whether there is going to be a club that's going to come and pay the money that Everton want for him between now and the close of the window.
Yeah, it's the injury issues really with him. Otherwise, he's a terrific player, no question.
Matheus Nunes, potentially, they're saying Atletico. City might let him go. He hasn't really got the game time at City, has he?
He hasn't, unfortunately for him. He's a player that has got undoubted quality. We saw it briefly at Wolves before he made the big money move to Man City. City have just got a lot of quality in that area. Nunes does bring something different to City's other centre midfielders. He's a great ball progressor. He's great on the ball. His off the ball play is what is a big issue at Man City. And I don't think he necessarily fits into what Pep Guardiola is trying to build at City in terms of their centre midfield players. And Atletico would be a good fit. We know that they've already signed Conor Gallagher. They've got Rodrigo de Paul, who's a World Cup winner. And they've got Pablo Barrios as well, who's a more of attacking midfielder. But Nunes will bring something different to that Atletico Madrid midfield. And it seemed like a good fit. Whether or not Atletico have got the finances to pay for Nunes at this point in the window remains to be seen. Of course, there was a huge outlay on Julian Alvarez. If this move was to happen, it'd probably be a loan with obligation to buy or an option to buy at the end of the contract or at the end of the loan move. But Matheus Nunes needs to find a new home. He needs to play football because, like I say, when we saw him at Wolves, he looked a very, very promising player. Just hasn't had enough minutes in this Pep Guardiola team. So it's understandable why there's been links with him to Atletico Madrid.
And finally, it looked like Aaron Ramsdale was off to Wolves. They couldn't get the deal done. Personal terms, apparently. They're going to bring in Sam Johnston from Palace, but it will be interesting to see whether Aaron Ramsdale does get a move late on. I mean, I think Arsenal wanted a permanent, but it might end up this late. It could well end up being a loan with a view to buy.
Chelsea a bit light in the goalkeeping
Yeah,
department.
you've only got 9. Surely it'd be nice to go into double figures, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
you could have 10 outfield goalkeepers, and all you need to do is sign another goalkeeper, then you've got a full team.
It's great.
with Aaron Ramsdale, there's a tendency to feel sorry for him because he was so good for Arsenal in those couple of seasons where the first season there they finished fifth, second season they finished second, and then he was unceremoniously dropped by Mikel Arteta, despite the fact that Arteta stated in pre-season that he's got 2 number 1 keepers. The minutes that Ramsdale played last season does not suggest that he's a number 1 keeper, but he can be a number 1 keeper for another team in the Premier League. Like you mentioned, the Wolves deal doesn't seem to be happening, but talks between Southampton and Arsenal are advancing well, so I expect him to go to Southampton before the close of the window. Alex McCarthy's currently the keeper there. He's a decent enough keeper, but I think Ramsdale's an upgrade. And I mentioned it when I came on last week that it's a new dawn when it comes to England, and everybody recognises that Jordan Pickford is England's number 1. But Lee Hawksbee might have different ideas when it comes to number 1 keeper. So for Aaron Ramsdale, it's important for him to find top-level football, play consistent minutes, and show people how good of a keeper he is. Because on this day, he's one of the best keepers in the league. Unfortunately for him at Arsenal, they've got another one of the best keepers in the league, and David Raya. We saw how magnificent he was against Aston Villa on the weekend. And so for Ramsdale, it's important for him to get moved, and I think Southampton will be the destination.
He doesn't live far from me, Aaron Ramsdale, and I was walking down the hill the other day near where his house is, and I saw a removal van outside, and I suddenly thought, I'm an ITK. I'm going to have an exclusive snippet. My sources, here we go, Aaron Ramsdale, here we go, certainly. But it was the house next door that was moving, so that was the end of that. So he's still very much, he hasn't got anywhere yet. Let me exclusively tell you that for what it's worth. Man hasn't moved yet. That's not going to get me 20 million Twitter followers, is it?
Not really, no.
Thanks, Kweku. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Kweku.
Cheers, guys.
Kweku Afari there. We'll catch up with Kweku tomorrow, I'm sure, because there's going to be more names coming up. I'm almost certainly, because it's going to be a mad couple of days, I would think, in the window with some big deals still to be done.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.